Alright, so let's get this cracking. So just recently I came across this article regarding Denzel Washington, who's being cast to play the role of Hannibal Barca, a Carthaginian general who lived throughout the 3rd or 2nd century BC and is widely known to be one of the greatest military generals of all time. And this article is basically conveying the fact that you have a sect of Tunisians that's upset at the fact that Denzel Washington, being a black man, is being cast to play the role as Hannibal, because they believe Hannibal to be their forefather, because Hannibal, being a Carthaginian, the Carthaginians initially established their civilization in what's known as modern-day Tunisia. So what these modern-day Tunisians are under the impression of is that Hannibal looked like them, which, if you look at most of the modern-day inhabitants of Tunisia today, they're fair-skinned. Some have curly hair, some have straight hair, but for the most part, they're fair-skinned, hook nose, so on and so forth. But in all actuality, especially when you observe the ancient artifacts and you see the way in which Hannibal Barca was depicted as, he would more so resemble a Denzel Washington as opposed to a modern-day Tunisian. And we're gonna see that throughout the course of this video. But before we even get to that, let's just read what some of this article has to say. So it says, Denzel Washington's casting as Hannibal in Netflix film sparks race row in Tunisia. Tunisian politician Yassine Mami claimed the country should protect itself against a possible falsification of historical facts. Denzel Washington's casting as the ancient Carthaginian general Hannibal has sparked controversy in Tunisia, where the military commander was born. It was announced last month that Washington will reunite with director Antoine Fuqua for the Netflix historical epic. Washington won the Academy Award for Best Actor for his role in Fuqua's 2001 crime thriller, Training Day. It says here, in response, MP Yassine Mami questioned why the country had not been informed about the content of the upcoming film, including Washington's casting. There is a risk of falsifying history, he reportedly stated. We need to take position on this subject. This is about defending Tunisian identity and listening to the reactions of civil society. And it says a change.org petition signed by over 1,400 signatories described Washington's casting as racist. Netflix is intending to air a documentary about Tunisian Carthaginian Hannibal, the military genius of Carthaginian origin, claiming he is non-indigenous, in brackets, Tunisian, North African, Punic, Phoenician, Easterner. The petition states, this is false and racist information in an attempt to support the racist Afrocentric movement. Hannibal was born in Carthage, near modern-day Tunis, in 247 BC. He is considered to be one of history's greatest military leaders. He is well known for going to war against the Roman Empire in 218 BC, leading his troops and African war elephants across the Alps so that he could attack Rome from the north. He spent years fighting in Europe but never captured Rome. He was eventually forced back to North Africa. Hannibal's skin color is not a matter of historical record. Historians largely agree that he was of Phoenician descent, likely with roots in the modern-day region of Lebanon and Syria, but he lived at a time when cultures mixed frequently. Okay, so yeah, that's basically what the article was getting into. So you have a sect of these modern-day Tunisians that's casting the role of Denzel Washington, playing the role as Hannibal Barca, as racist, as for a falsification of historical facts. And what they failed to understand is that they're not the true blood descendants of the inhabitants 2,000 years ago, unbeknownst to them. Because a lot of people fail to understand migration patterns, as I've previously stated in other videos. As I said before, you look at Australia today, chiefly Caucasian people, but that's due to migration patterns. That's due to Caucasian people from the British Isles migrating to Australia. But if you look at Australia 2,000 years ago, all you're going to see is the indigenous inhabitants of Australia, which were melanated people groups. And the same thing applies to America. Like, these aren't hard concepts to grasp. I don't know why people have a hard time accepting these things. Like, it's not hard to understand. But anyway, it says, Hannibal's skin color is not a matter of historical record. Whilst that may be true, based off public record, we do have a bunch of coins that he's left us that's available to the public. And we're gonna see the way in which he was depicted. And we're gonna see that he would resemble a Denzel Washington. But that's him there. So we're gonna see it. So lo and behold, we have Hannibal Barca. 8 different coin depictions of Hannibal Barca. And we see the woolly hair, we see the broad nose, and we see the thick lips. It's clear as day. So these Tunisians, they have nothing to be angry about, because Denzel Washington playing the role of Hannibal Barca in this new Netflix film coming out is an accurate portrayal. They have nothing to be angry about. The modern day inhabitants of Tunisia look nothing like the person on the coin. And that's, with all due respect, it's just the truth. And it's unfortunate because since they've grown up in these regions and they've been taught that they're the direct descendants of those that were inhabiting these regions 2,000 years ago, they have the preconceived notion that Hannibal Barca looked similar in appearance to them, when that couldn't be further from the truth. Now, to finalize this video, I wanted to get into some literature. So this book is entitled Megalith, The Black Builders of Stonehenge, by an author called Aylmer von Fleischer. So it says, the Phoenicians were Canaanites who were descendants of Ham and were thus Hamites. Hamite was a term once used as a reference to blacks. By the year 1600, European scholars had begun using the term Hamite to represent a black person. The Phoenicians have also been called Sidonians from Sidon, the first son of Canaan. Works like Jacob Bryant's 6th volume, A New System or an Analysis of Ancient Mythology, also proves that the Phoenicians were black. So this one of the coins I was showing previously. It says the true face of Hannibal. Coins found in the Chiana Valley, Italy, circa 208 to 207 BC. Hannibal took command of the Carthaginian forces at the age of 25. Not many years elapsed before he defeated the Romans at Trasimeno. His age is consistent with the image on the coin. Hannibal was of Phoenician aristocratic lineage. Other coins of Hannibal. So again, these were the same coins that I was showing before. Now this book is just substantiating it. In 1829, the British antiquary Godfrey Higgins stated in his book, The Celtic Druids, using as his source an even earlier work by one Reverend Mr. Faber's Origin of Pagan Idol. Mr. Faber then goes on to show that the Phoenicians, the Anakim, the Philistine, the Pali, and the Egyptian shepherd kings were all descendants of Cush or Cushites, which the translators of the Septuagint always render by the word Ethiopians, which in fact in the Greek language means nothing but blacks, but not necessarily Negroes. and as such it might very properly be translated. The renowned Senegalese scholar Cheikh Anta Diop says, no less paradoxical is the fact that the Indo-Europeans never created a civilization in their own native lands, the Eurasian plains. The civilizations attributed to them are inevitably located in the heart of Negro countries, in the southern part of the northern hemisphere: Egypt, Arabia, Phoenicia, Mesopotamia, Elam, India. In all those lands, there were already Negro civilizations, with the Indo-Europeans. When the Indo-Europeans arrived as rough nomads during the second millennium. So that's quoted from African Origin of Civilization. So pretty much this author's quoting from the works of different authors that's coming to the conclusion that the Phoenicians were black. So again, it says here, on the ethnic composition of Carthage, he has to say this. Since 1450, white Libyans, people of the sea, or Rebu, had invaded North Africa, west of Egypt. Before the founding of Carthage, they had time to scatter all along the coast, toward the west, as Herodotus reports. The hinterland of Carthage was then inhabited by indigenous blacks, who had been there throughout antiquity, and by white Libyan tribes. Crossbreeding occurred gradually, as in Spain, and the Carthaginians, both common people and elite, were evidently Negroid. We need not insist on the fact that the Carthaginian general Hannibal, who barely missed destroying Rome and who is considered one of the greatest military leaders of all time, was Negroid. It can be said that with his defeat, the supremacy of the Negro or Negroid world ended. So this is quoted from the same book, The African Origin of Civilization by Cheikh Anta Diop. And as you can see, came to the conclusion that Hannibal Barca was a Negro, who was Negroid in appearance. And for those unaware, Cheikh Anta Diop was a Senegalese scholar who lived during the 20th century, and he was really someone that challenged mainstream academia through the various works that he produced regarding the ancient civilizations being melanated people groups. And he was even willing to go back and forth with the people that was a part of mainstream academia by putting all the evidence to the forefront. And a lot of the times they were unwilling to do so because they probably understood that a lot of their work was based off narrative and agendas. So it just says it all. So you lot can, do your own research on Cheikh Anta Diop in regards to that. Right, so we have another source here. Sex and Race, Volume 1. Negro Caucasian Mixing in All Ages and All Lands, The Old World, Volume 1, by J.A. Rogers, published in 2014. So here we're going to read the first bit. At the top, it says, Hannibal and his African troops must have brought a great deal of Negro strain into the Roman population. For 13 years, they dominated the peninsula from the Alps to Naples. Hannibal himself was a full-blooded Negro with woolly hair, as his coins show. You see? So the coins we were just looking at, that's the coins that this author is referencing, showing him to be a full-blooded Negro with woolly hair. Now we're going to read this first chapter. It says, not the first chapter, the first paragraph. It says, Ratzel and Reckless have also spoken of the marked Negro strain in the North African peoples. The former says, Negroes crossed the Alps with Hannibal and fell at Worth beside McMahon. Whatever their original nature may have been, all this population must have been alloyed with a strong Ethiopian element. And when it says a strong Ethiopian element, it just means a strong black element, because Ethiopian just means black. The entire Semitic and Hamitic population of Africa has, in other words, a mulatto character, which extends to the Semites outside Africa. Hannibal, most famous of all Carthaginians, was a Negro, as was said. So again, further substantiation. Now, in this source, Black Heroes in World History, Tuesday magazine published in 1969, it says, and Gilbert Pickard points out, the majority of the Punic Carthaginian populace seems to have had African, indeed Negroid ancestry. You see, so the Carthaginians, who were they? Those were Hannibal's people. And it said they had Negroid ancestry. So we have another excerpt that states, what we do know also is that the Phoenicians in Negroid people, so keep in mind the Phoenicians are interchangeable with the Carthaginians, who were Hannibal's people, says they were a Negroid people, did mine tin in Cornwall, and that Egyptians went to Britain before the Romans. Gerald Macy gives abundant proof, including Egyptian words in ancient British languages. The Cilius, or Western Britons, mentioned by Tacitus of the 1st century as having dark skins and unusually curly hair, were very likely of Phoenician or Egyptian descent. Now here it states, in the second paragraph, some of the Phoenician rulers, as Tamnit and his illustrious son, Eshmunazar II, were pure Negroes. Eshmunazar is described as being Egyptian with large full, almond-shaped eyes, the nose flattened, and the lips remarkably thick after the Negro mold. Mention of the Phoenicians brings us back to the Ham story. According to this bit of Jewish folklore, Noah cursed Ham's son, Canaan. Now according to the same source, the eldest son of Canaan was Sidon, the ancestor of the Phoenicians and the founder of the great cities of Sidon and Tyre. The Phoenicians were the greatest explorers and merchants of antiquity. They circumnavigated Africa, colonized Britain, and worked the tin mines there, and founded Carthage and a colony or two in West Africa. Their glory certainly dims that of the ancient Jews. You see, so this is just, some more background on Hannibal's people, the Phoenicians, also known as the Canaanites or Carthaginians, being a Negroid people group, as this author, likes to state. So I'm going to bring out this final source, which is entitled Prehistoric Nations, or Inquiries Concerning Some of the Great Peoples and Civilizations of Antiquity, and their probable relation to a still older civilization of the Ethiopians or Kushites of Arabia, by John Baldwin, published in 1869. So it says the term Phoenicia did not come into use until long after the Phoenician dominion in Asia Minor, on the Black Sea, and on the islands and coast of the Aegean and Eastern Mediterranean was broken. We call certain people Moors, who never knew themselves by the name we give them. So did the Greeks and Romans describe a certain people of antiquity as Phoenicians. We cannot have a regular history of this people, but we know that the early Greeks called them Ethiopians, you see. And again, Ethiopians means black or burnt face. So the Greeks referenced to the Phoenicians as blacks. And again, this was Hannibal Barca's people. So again, this doesn't fit the physical appearance of these Tunisians that are complaining about Denzel Washington playing the role of Hannibal Barca. So, I mean, it is what it is, man.